When Narendra Modi became India's Prime Minister in 2014, many people hoped that he would help India grow its economy rapidly, similar to how China had done. They wanted India to have an efficient government and advanced factories that would attract billions in investment from big international companies. Now, after 5 years and as Modi seeks re-election, it's becoming evident that India cannot become the next China. Comparing these two countries is a common idea, but in reality, they have very little in common apart from their large populations. China is a one-party autocracy that successfully brought its homogeneous Han and Mandarin-speaking majority together for decades of radical reforms. In contrast, India is a diverse multi-party democracy, and it's always a challenge to unite its numerous ethnic and linguistic minorities towards a single goal. So in this video, we'll explain why India cannot become the next China. As for the commonly asked question of whether India will surpass China, our answer is that it's possible, but won't happen in the next 10 or 20 years. Currently, India still lags far behind China. Before we continue, please make sure to subscribe to our channel to stay updated with more interesting videos about developments in Asia. Now let's dive into the reasons why India differs from China. Free market communism vs. state-dependent democracy. In the late 1970s, China's leaders became frustrated with the problems and confusion they faced under Mao's rule. They started giving up some control over the economy. They allowed rural Chinese people to work on their own land or move to other parts of the country for jobs. They also set up special economic areas in cities along the coast where there were fewer government rules, and this led to the creation of many new jobs. The government also shut down many old, decaying, state-owned factories, which left millions of people without work. Because there was no financial help from the government, many had to find new jobs in the growing private sector, which led to double-digit economic growth in the following decades. India, on the other hand, has been cautious about making large-scale changes that could cause mass job losses and big migrations. This caution is partly because India's democratic leaders are worried that voters would be unhappy with the short-term disruptions and hardships. As a result, India has seen a slower shift from rural to urban areas, from farming to factories, and from government-run to privately owned businesses compared to China. Most Indians still live and work in rural areas, with about 70% of the population residing there. Thriving new cities like in China are rare in India. Many industries in India are still owned and managed by the less efficient government. India has experimented with some free market reforms, but mostly in response to economic crises rather than as a consistent long-term strategy like China. During his first term as Prime Minister, Modi continued with gradual changes that were acceptable to India's diverse population. For example, there was no major sell-off of government-owned assets, not even in the big state-owned banks that are a major obstacle to faster growth. One thing is already clear from the political parties' plans for the 2019 election, as seen in the manifestos released by Modi and the main opposition parties. These plans won't lead to the relaxation of land acquisition laws, labor regulations, or the reduction of government-owned companies. These are the kinds of changes that boosted China, as well as South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan before it, into periods of remarkable growth. Instead, the party manifestos propose giving handouts that will leave the government with less money to invest in things like roads, ports, and power plants. The two most populous countries in the world, China and India, are following very different paths. China is moving toward a blend of capitalism and communism, while India relies more on the government for its democracy. These differences are quite noticeable. Does this mean that India would have been better off with a government that has more control? Not necessarily. For every authoritarian success like China, there are multiple failures like Cuba, Venezuela, and North Korea. China had good leadership and a bit of luck. It is a unique case, not a model for India or other developing countries to follow. A comparison between education and workforce in China and India. Over the span of 40 years leading up to 2022, about 770 million people in China moved out of poverty, which is perhaps the biggest decrease in poverty ever. Think about this. China's average income per person was only $89.50 in 1960, but by 2021 it had gone up to $12,556.30. However, a few things have caused China's economy to slow down, suggesting it might not grow as fast anymore. Additionally, after many years of limiting the number of births, China's population is now decreasing rapidly. Recently, the government has tried to encourage more births by making it harder to get abortions and urging women to have more children. But some people believe it might be too late for this strategy to work. On the other hand, India is on the way up. India is going through a different trend. Its population is growing a lot, and it's also becoming younger. Nearly a quarter of Indians are under 14 years old. What's more, India has a big workforce, a growing local market, and a thriving tech industry, even though it faces challenges from the world's economic conditions. India has even become the world's fifth largest economy, surpassing the United Kingdom. But even though China's growth is slowing down, it doesn't mean that India, with the largest group of working-age people globally, can replace China as the world's factory. So what's holding India back from taking China's place? India's social indicators like education and other measures of well-being are still far behind China's and other advanced economies. Only 74% of Indians can read and write, compared to 97% of Chinese, and it's even lower at 62% for Indian women. In India, poor education systems, especially in the northern parts of the country, along with a big gap in access to digital technology, mean that vocational jobs are not as advanced as in China. The challenge for India is that having a large young population doesn't help if people don't have the necessary skills. If India doesn't address this, the country will grow old before it becomes prosperous. It's one thing to have the world's biggest population and the largest group of working-age people, but it's quite different to provide enough good jobs that increase productivity and economic growth. While China did an excellent job turning its growing population into a manufacturing powerhouse that focused on selling products abroad, most jobs in India are still concentrated in agriculture, with about 60% of the workforce working in this sector. India versus China on infrastructure. Another thing missing in India's path to growth is the infrastructure. This means the railways, roads, and airports are not working as well as they should. They cause problems for moving goods from one place to another, which slows down growth and investments. India is not the first country that faces these issues, but Prime Minister Modi hopes that by making big improvements, India's $3.5 trillion economy can become a $5 trillion economy by 2025 to 26. However, making these improvements is a bit more complex. Unlike China, where the government has more control, India is the world's biggest democracy, and Modi has to work with 28 state governments, along with cities and government departments in a country that has often had conflicts. India doesn't have the same kind of connected system as China, where products are made using parts from inside the country. In India, manufacturers often have to bring in parts from other countries, which makes the final product more expensive. One reason India hasn't built as many manufacturing facilities as China is that it hasn't spent as much on infrastructure. For example, in the year 2019, before the pandemic, China used about 6.5% of its GDP to improve infrastructure, while India only used 4.5%. These are the reasons why India can't replicate China's path. However, this doesn't mean India isn't growing or can never surpass China. In fact, we believe that India's economic growth prospects are even more promising than China's. But it will take a long time to significantly reduce the economic development gap between these two countries. One thing is certain: the increasing tension between the United States and China will work in India's favor. Companies and businesses are seeking alternatives to China, and India may play a significant role in this shift. What are your thoughts on whether India can follow China's footsteps? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content, please show your support by hitting the like button. Most importantly, subscribe to our channel to stay updated with more engaging videos about developments in Asia.